Hello everybody, my name is Kara, and today I'm wearing my K-drama t-shirt, or my milk tea and K-drama shirt, because I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review of one of the books that I read during Koreadathon this year, and that is Somewhere Only We Know by Maurene. So this is a contemporary novel, and we follow two points of view. One of them is Lucky, our main female character, and she is a K-pop star, and one night as she's on her tour in Hong Kong, she gets a craving for a hamburger, and so she goes outside of her hotel room, and she ends up meeting up with our other main character, who is a boy named Jack. He's actually a tabloid photographer. When Jack realizes who she is and realizes that she could be his big break, he decides to help her out and spend time with her, and over the next couple of days they end up going on an adventure around Hong Kong. So some background on this book before I get into my personal feelings about it. This is kind of loosely inspired by the movie Roman Holiday with Audrey Hepburn and Gregory Peck, which, as I briefly mentioned in my TBR video, that's one of my favorite movies, and it's a very formative movie for me in some ways, and so I think that helped going into this book, because I had an expectation of certain plot elements. Like, I feel like this book has gotten pretty low reviews overall, and a lot of the reasons people gave, which are totally valid, are they didn't like that Jack was keeping such a big secret from Lucky for the entire time, that basically the relationship felt kind of icky to them, because there was this big thing that he knew that Lucky didn't, and I totally understand that. And I think one of the reasons that didn't bother me as much as some readers is because I do know Roman Holiday, and I went into this book knowing there was going to be that uncomfortable aspect at the beginning, and knowing that that would probably be addressed and explored throughout the book. So that was one reason. And another thing that I think helped me with this book, because I did really enjoy this one, is going in with somewhat low expectations. Partly because of what I mentioned of this getting kind of mixed reviews or low reviews, but also because I really didn't like one of Maurene's other books, which was I Believe in a Thing Called Love. I did really enjoy The Way You Make Me Feel, but I had just had kind of mixed experiences with her books so far, so I was like, maybe I'm not gonna like this one either, especially given the reasons people had given for not liking it. But ultimately, I really enjoyed this novel. This actually ended up being my favorite Maurene book that I have read so far, and I'm gonna obviously review it and talk about why. So before I get into the character and relationship stuff, which is obviously a big part of this novel, I want to mention a couple of other things that I really enjoyed about it. Number one is the setting. It was so cool and so refreshing to have a run around and get to know the city plot that didn't take place in New York City or in Los Angeles. I guess New York tends to be the one that happens in. And I really enjoy visiting New York, it's a cool city, but it's just almost every time there's a book where that's a plot line, it takes place in New York City. And it was just so fun and so refreshing to get to see a city that was different. And the setting of Hong Kong itself was also just really engaging and really well described, the food and the places that they visited, and I actively enjoyed all of the parts of them just traveling the city and going from place to place and figuring out what they were going to do, when sometimes in books like that, it's kind of those are the parts I feel are filler in between the actual character interactions that I care about. So I just really enjoyed that element. And also I really enjoyed that the chapters were so short. Not too short to the point where it felt choppy, but the fact that we were flipping pretty frequently between Jack and Lucky's points of view, I think it really contributed to this feeling of this compressed timeline. You were kind of racing through the book as Jack and Lucky were racing around Hong Kong, and I really liked that, in addition to it just being a very compelling, kind of compulsively readable book. I feel story-wise it also made sense. So next to talk about the characters, I loved Lucky so much. She is just the sweetest and kindest and most sunshiny person, and frequently in Jack's point of view, he will describe her as somebody who just has this aura about her, this energy that kind of lights up a room. And I feel that was so well deserved, because even reading this book, obviously she's not a real person I'm witnessing, but just reading this book, I believed it. I really felt that atmosphere or that vibe she gave off of just this bright and brilliant personality, and I just really liked that. She was very easy to love as a character, and then in addition to that, I think that her storyline, the things that she was dealing with, were really interesting and really serious in some ways. This idea that she's kind of exploring, or that her arc is representing, is what do you do when you're doing something you love, but the way you're doing it, you don't love it anymore? Or do you ever reach a point where instead of being excited that you get to professionally do something that you love, it becomes a burden, you know? And I just thought that was explored in such a thoughtful way. I was taken off guard by how thoughtful that exploration was, which I shouldn't have been, because obviously light and fun books frequently deal with more serious topics. But I just really, really enjoyed that. I loved the way that Lucky kind of explored that idea, and she was like one of my favorite parts of the book for me. As for Jack's character, I did like him. I didn't like him quite as much as Lucky, because I loved Lucky, but most of the time I did like Jack, even though I wasn't like quite as invested in him as a character. And I think especially considering the like big secret that he's keeping from Lucky, I think that was pretty impressive that he was still an overall likable character, or somebody that you didn't mind following. And I think there were a couple of reasons for that. And one of them is I think that very early on in the book, it's established that Jack is in general a very good person. That yes, he's planning on making a choice that like is, you know, a pretty huge violation of privacy for people. And this like secret that he's keeping from somebody that he obviously starts to care about, like that's not okay, and the book doesn't try and make it sound okay. But I think the fact that you meet him and like him before that happens, I think that matters. And especially there are multiple times in like very small moments or small scenes where it's clear that even though Jack does have this serious choice that he's making, he's not somebody who like treats women badly, or like he's not like a sketchy scumbag like most of the time. And I think that was really important. Like there's this one moment in particular, because like the reason Lucky wanders off looking for a hamburger is that she's just taken her anti-anxiety medication and her sleep medication or something like that, so she's pretty loopy, and she basically seems like she's totally drunk, and Jack is like trying to take care of this like drunk girl and not let anything happen to her. So he's like trying to get her into a cab or whatever. He's like obviously not planning on like babysitting her the entire night. And then I forget what it is that Lucky says, but she says something like don't make me go back there, or like I can't go back to that place, or something like that. And even though she doesn't mean it this way, Jack takes that as like, whoa, like red flag, that's something you should always pay attention to when a woman says. And he immediately stops and he's like, what do you mean? Like, where did you come from? Like, what's going on? Why can't you go back there? Like, he's instantly tuned into the fact that this could be a real problem that somebody needs protection from. So I think like little moments like that went a long way towards me being okay with Jack as a main character, even though again, the choice he makes about the tabloid thing, like that whole setup for the premise is not okay. But I think the book did a pretty good job balancing that out. And another reason, or like the other main reason that I feel like Jack was still somebody you were okay following, is he had a relatively good reason for doing what he was doing. Like it was financial motivation, but you could tell why he did need the money, and like what he thought, like the reason he felt so invested in making this career work for him. So again, not to excuse that, but I think he did actually have a reason that made sense. Like these are like upper teen characters, I think, where it's like, yeah, I could see a like 18, 19-year-old making this choice because of financial reasons and this other thing. So that believability factor also helped, I think. And then as far as the romance itself, I actually really liked it. It is quick because obviously this book only takes place over a couple days, but in contrast with some other like similar quick relationships I've read, I still really enjoyed this one, and I still felt it was pretty believable. And I think that's because even though the actual time frame was pretty short with these characters, their interactions were meaningful. Like the conversations they had were significant, and not just like flirting or banter back and forth. Even though I love a good banter, I feel like they actually did truly get to know each other throughout these couple of days. So that even though, yes, it's still a quick romance, it felt like they had known each other for longer, or it felt like their connection was deeper than just like a couple days flirtation kind of thing. So I ended up actually really liking the romance. And I also just think their interactions as characters were really fun. There were only a couple of things I didn't really like about this book, and one of them is related to Jack's character arc. So I feel like overall this book had a potentially problematic setup or premise, like with that whole secret and like privacy issue, but that was handled well. And the only exception to that being handled well is I think related to Jack's arc, because there was one point in the book where it felt like he had already changed his mind about something important, but the only reason he didn't act on it was to make the conflict last longer, or like happen at a different time or something. So it just felt kind of like unnatural with the flow of the story and with like the way it seemed Jack's character was developing, so that was a little frustrating. And then the only other real negative is the epilogue in this book. Like, I'm not somebody who hates epilogues on principle. Some epilogues I enjoy, some I don't, or I find very unnecessary. This one I actually liked pretty much all of the things that happened in the epilogue, but just something about the way it was written or the way it was done, it felt a little, I guess anticlimactic is the word I'm looking for. Like the end of the main part of the novel was just really great and I really loved it, and then for whatever reason something about the epilogue felt a little bit flatter to me, which is funny because like again I enjoyed the things that happened in the epilogue, just something about the way it was written or the way it was like structured, I don't know, whatever, something about the way the epilogue was done, I was left wanting a little more, but it didn't like ruin the whole book for me or anything. So overall I gave Somewhere Only We Know 4 stars. I really enjoyed this one. I can't remember if I mentioned this at the beginning of the review, but this is actually my favorite Maurene novel that I have read so far. This is the 3rd one I've read from her. I did really like The Way You Make Me Feel, especially the friendship aspects, but the romance was kind of a significant part of the book and I felt like that one fell a little flat to me. And with this novel, just the main characters, especially Lucky, and the things that they were going through, like Jack also had some things he was dealing with like his family expectations and things like that I think were handled really just in a great way. The things about, you know, doing what you love and making that a job or not, like I think that was really interesting. Again, I loved the setting. I also loved the Roman holiday aspects. Like there are specific scenes that are like, you can tell where Maurene got the inspiration from the movie, and I just loved that. So I just really enjoyed this one. This is a book where I can absolutely see why a lot of reviewers didn't enjoy it so much, but for me it just really worked. Which again, I think part of that was the background of me loving Roman holiday and also being very prepared for the things that people did not like about it. So please let me know if you guys have read Somewhere Only We Know, like what you thought of it. Like, did you also enjoy it? Or were you kind of on the side of like, no, this is not okay and I can't really buy into this relationship because it starts this way? I'd be really interested to hear what you guys think. Or do you plan to pick up this book in the future? Let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!